G'day, my name's Nick Linden and I work with Ag Victoria as a livestock officer, and today we're just going to work through some really simple calculations about costing out your feeds. It's a really important process to go through to make sure that what you're feeding to your animals is the most cost-effective option. So a really common scenario that people want to look at when they're costing out their feeds is, am I better off feeding grain versus am I better off feeding a different form of roughage? You know, maybe hay like we've got here today. So let's look at a comparison. We've got barley here that we've feed tested, so we know the energy, we know the protein of it, we know the dry matter, and that's $350 a tonne. It's 90% dry matter, 12 ME of energy, and 12% crude protein. But the comparison is we've also got some hay here, vetch hay, that's $300 a tonne and at 85% dry matter, but the comparison is it's only 9 megajoules of energy per kilo of dry matter. But it's good for protein and it's 14% protein. Today we're actually only going to cost these out on an energy basis, but obviously when you're comparing feeds, it's really important that you make sure that the other requirements of the animals have been met, such as the protein. So we know for the class of stock that we're working on today that this level of protein, 14 or 12, is fine, so that these two feedstuffs are a fair comparison. When we're costing them, there's some really great tools. There's apps, there's other spreadsheets that you can use. The thing that I always keep in my mind to keep it really simple is I always just think in terms of it's cents per megajoule. So if we can cost them through to a cents per megajoule, and I just keep going through that process, it enables me to work through the calculations relatively simple. So if we just write that out, just as a reminder as much as anything, we're trying to work on cents per megajoule, and that sort of gives us the formula for how we need to calculate these costs. So $300 per tonne, at a first step, I just need to convert the $300 into cents. So I multiply that out by 100 and I get how many cents per tonne of feed. So 300 by the 100 cents means we're actually talking about 30,000 cents. Now, don't get sort of put off by the size of the numbers. It all works through relatively in a straightforward process. So our cost for a tonne of feed that we've just bought is 30,000 cents per how many megajoules am I getting? Now the thing that we need to be able to correct for, and it's really important that we do this process, the megajoules of energy are only consumed in the dry matter of the feed. And you know, if you're talking about grains that are 90% dry matter, there's not a lot of difference. But if you're comparing either to pasture or to silage that's got a lot more moisture in it, we really need to be aware of that, because obviously the moisture hasn't got any of the nutrition tied up in it. The nutrition is only in the dry matter. So when we actually buy a tonne of this hay, we're not getting a tonne of dry matter. It's only 85% dry matter. So our tonne, our 1,000 kilos of fresh weight that we've bought, multiplied by our 85% dry matter, means that we're only getting 850 kilos of dry matter for the tonne that we've bought, for the 1,000 kilos of fresh weight. So we've spent our 30,000 cents, $300, and we've bought 850 kilos of dry matter. Now, because we've feed tested it, we also know that each kilo of dry matter had 9 units of energy. So we've effectively bought, for our fresh tonne that we've gone out and purchased, 850 kilos of dry matter, that every kilo of dry matter has 9 units of energy, forgive my writing. So we just need to multiply that up. And remember, back of my mind, we're always trying to get to cents per unit of energy, per megajoule. Forgive me. So we've got 850 kilos of dry matter that we purchase. Each one of those kilos has 9 megajoules of energy. So for the tonne that we've gone out and bought, it actually has 7,650 megajoules that we've purchased. So I'm repeating myself, but we're always thinking it's cents per megajoule. We know we spent 30,000 cents to buy, and effectively when we're buying the feed, we're looking to buy the energy, and that's why it's really important that we compare it on an energy basis. So 30,000 cents, and I'm just working through these as we go, divided by our 7,650 megajoules that we've bought, means that, so our cost if we're buying the hay, is 3.9 cents per megajoule. So all of a sudden, we've costed this feed out to how much the energy, which is the important bit, is actually costing us. So now what we need to do, let's just leave our 3.9 cents per megajoule there because we know that was the cost of our hay, and quickly work through the same process for our barley. So it costs a bit more, on a per tonne basis, $350 per tonne, cents per megajoule, $350, $350 plus our 2 zeros means that we've spent 35,000 cents to buy our tonne of feed. And let's do the same process. Let's multiply through. For that tonne of feed that we purchased, we're actually ending up with slightly more dry matter because it's a high dry matter feed. It's got less moisture in it, which you'd expect for the grain. So 90% dry matter, and we only know this because we've feed tested it, so we're not guessing at what the values are. We actually know these are the values for the grains that we're comparing. So for every tonne of feed that we purchase, we get 900 kilos of dry matter. Again, we're just going through this process to calculate exactly how many units of energy that we're buying for every tonne of feed that we get. So our 900 kilos of dry matter by the 12 units of energy that every kilo of dry matter has. I'll just go back to the calculator. So our 900 kilos of dry matter, every kilo of dry matter has 12 units of energy in it. So we're actually purchasing 10,800 megajoules of energy when we buy a tonne of that grain. So cents per megajoule, we know that it cost us 35,000 and we got our 10,800. So let's work that out and see how the two line up as a point of comparison. 35,000 cents divided by 10,800 megajoules. Okay, so there's a slight difference there. And the cents per megajoules on our barley comes out at 3.2 cents per megajoule. Now, it's really tempting to look at that and say, there's not a lot of difference there. Those two values are pretty close. And they might be pretty close, but when we're costing out feeds, this is why it's really important. We need to do our budgets and we need to look forward because it's additive and it's cumulative. It doesn't look much when you're just talking about, the difference on each megajoule that's being consumed. But if you're feeding 4,000 ewes for 3 months at a time in containment, it's going to add up over time. So it's a really, I find it a really useful process. Find the feeds that you're thinking about feeding your stock, make sure they meet the energy and protein requirements of the stock, and then actually cost them out. So you can see, simple whiteboard, a couple of simple mathematics equations or questions, and all of a sudden we've generated the cents per megajoule cost, 3.9 versus 3.2. Don't get fooled by if they look fairly similar. It's worth calculating out further. And again, there's some really good tools that you can use to forward plan and do that longer term feed budget. So you can actually work out how much of an investment you're going to be in for feeding your stock long term. So those differences may not look like much, but it's really surprising when you start to calculate it over time. They do add up. And a quick calculation will come. If you were feeding 4,000 ewes on a full ration for say 3 months, the difference between feed 1 and feed 2 is going to be in the order of $25,000. It's really worth doing your sums and calculating exactly what that's going to be, because the message is that sometimes the cheapest feed on a per tonne basis isn't actually the cheapest feed overall.
So in this video, we mentioned a couple of different resources or tools that you can use to help costing out your rations. So on the Feeding Livestock website, if you just scroll down on the homepage, you'll actually come across the drought feeding booklets. So you can select either the beef or the sheep one, whichever is relevant to your operation. And if you just click on that, it will actually open up the booklet. Well, it actually lists the chapters all down the right-hand side, so you can narrow in your focus rather than having to scroll through the whole book. Or if you just scroll across, you'll see the view PDF and that would open the whole book for you. But in terms of costing out our rations, if we go into chapter 5, which is all about choosing feeds, and then we just have to scroll down a little bit, but if you keep scrolling, and you'll see there's some really useful tables there, but if you keep scrolling down, you'll actually come to the feed comparison between, in this example, it's feed A and feed B, where it costs out those two different feeds to actually work out which is the best value or which is the cheapest on a cents per megajoule basis. And the other table that's just below it that's of use as well, it's almost a ready reckoner, and that just looks at a range of different feeds at a range of different prices to cost them out onto a cents per megajoule basis. And if we go back to the home page, scroll just back up to the top. So if we start from the home page, you can see wherever you are on the website, the home button in the top left-hand side will take you back to the home page. So the other tool that's useful, if you want to cost out how much you're having to feed over a duration of time and for a different mob size, is we can actually go into sheep resources, and you'll see there's sheep tools and calculators down the bottom. Now, if we just scroll down, because there's a couple of them listed again, but there's a cumulative feeding table. Now, this is just a spreadsheet that opens in Excel, which you actually have to download to your own computer. So if we just click on that link, it will open up the spreadsheet. And this becomes your opportunity to enter in. You can customize the results for your mob and for how long you're going to be feeding. So you can alter the grain price, you can alter the size of the mob that you're feeding, and then you can pick the length of time that you'll be feeding for, as well as how much you'll be feeding per head per week. And then that spreadsheet takes it down to the bottom and gives you a calculation for the cost per head, how much you're going to have to spend to feed them. But really important, it shows you the total cost for how much you're going to be feeding for that planned period.
So I hope this process has been useful, and it's something that you can take away and use at home. Just remember, it's a really important tool. Cost out your feeds, work out how much it's going to cost you. There are some really good resources available online that can help you work through these calculations. You don't have to do it all yourself. Use some of the apps, use some of the tools on the Feeding Livestock website, but it's just really important before you go into feeding your stock, make sure you know how much it's going to cost so you can do your budgets and plan longer term.